Representative Asia, EURAXESS Worldwide, and Director of Rentzow-Vasu Consulting. Before we start the session, please allow me to read her short biography. Dr. Susanne Rentzow-Vasu is the regional representative for the EURAXESS Links Asian Network, a pan-European network that promotes research and cooperation between Europe and Southeast Asia. She also runs her own consultancy, providing political analysis and risk assessments, as well as project management services to her clients. She has previously headed the Information Center Singapore of the German Academic Exchange Service, DAAD, as its director from the year 2008 to 2012. Susan also held the post of Senior Policy Officer with the EU Delegation to Singapore. She holds a master's degree in European Union Studies from the University of Newcastle, UK, and a PhD in International Relations from the University of Wales, Aberystwyth, UK. Without further delay, let us begin the session, and we will have the Q&A session at the end. Please, Dr. Susan, you may begin now. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the wonderful introduction. Let me just set up my presentation here. A window to, okay. Yeah, oops. It says here that I cannot share my screen. What should I be doing, Mustafa?
So if you can email me the slide, I will share on behalf of you.
Okay.
You see the present now button?
Yes, it says, and I said if your entire screen, it tells me you must grant
a window, and you can choose which slide you want to present.
It says you can't share screen.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
You just email to me. I try to help you.
Okay, I'll email it to you. I hope it works because it's a huge presentation. Just give me a second. Okay. Oh, we have some. Hello, good morning, how are you? Okay, Mustafa, it's just uploading. I hope it works. And I hope it worked now.
You send by email, right?
I send it to you by email. Yeah, you should check whether it's there.
Okay. I think you can explain a little bit about EURAXESS.
Yes, it went through, so you should have it.
Yeah.
Tak boleh lah besar sangat.
Yasmin, close mic, please.
You get it? You got it, Mustafa?
Yeah, not yet. Okay, got it.
Okay, perfect. Well, just while Mustafa is trying to set it up, thank you very much for inviting me to give this presentation to all of you today. I hope you're all safe and sound wherever you are. This, of course, are trying times for us, but I always try to say it's also an opportunity for us to reflect a little bit on our next career change. And I think this is an opportune moment for me to present to you the EURAXESS network, and specifically one of the fellowships that is just open for application. Because that, I think, is a great opportunity for you to kind of stretch your wings and see how you can take your research career further. While Mustafa is setting up the presentation, EURAXESS, you can see it here behind me, is a European initiative. And it's basically, EURAXESS means your access to Europe. So it's a network that is meant specifically for researchers that are interested in working with European partners or working in Europe for some time. And it's a portal, a website that has a whole host of information that is relevant to researchers like yourselves that are interested in collaboration opportunities with Europe and that are interested in finding out what fellowship opportunities are available. Is it working, Mustafa? Oh, Mustafa is on the phone right now. Huh. Here we go. I think that's the presentation. Perfect, excellent. So here we go. I mean, this is also all new to us. Meeting virtually, there's bound to be a little hiccup. We had the same problem yesterday. Everybody is using all kinds of platforms. Previously, I could have just taken a plane to join you live, but now we have to do this virtually. Is it working, Mustafa? We could see the slides just now for a second. There they are. Perfect. Okay. We can see the slides. Wonderful. So, Mustafa, do you want to?
Yes. You can proceed.
Okay, so if you want to put them on the whole slide, yeah, perfect, exactly. So, as I was saying, what I'd like to present to you today is primarily a tool. It's a tool that you can use if you are looking to find out what is happening in the research and sciences area in Europe. So the program and the network that I'm presenting to you is called EURAXESS. And if we can have the next slide, please, Mustafa. You will see that EURAXESS is an opportunity for you to find, first of all, lots and lots of information. It's information about what Europe is doing in research, science, and innovation, and what kind of funding primarily is available for you to get involved. EURAXESS is also a growing network. It's a network of real researchers. We currently have about 50,000 researchers outside of Europe alone that are using this platform to get in touch with each other. And this is important specifically for junior researchers amongst yourselves who may not have a network just yet. You want to work with Europe, but you're not entirely sure where you could link in. And this is a network where people are looking for each other to work together, either in the form of conferences, or they want to write a paper together, or they're looking for partners to apply for funding together. Next slide, please. So what you find on the EURAXESS portal, and I think this is of importance to all of you, primarily it's a job and a funding portal. So I looked yesterday, there's about 8,000 open vacancies listed currently throughout Europe for researchers of all academic and scientific disciplines. So these are positions both for PhD students, postdoc, senior positions, but also positions that are related to research, for example, lab technicians. So a whole host of opportunities that are available for you. This is also important because you, as researchers in Malaysia, in Indonesia, in Thailand, wherever you are, can use this portal to also post your own opportunities. So if you are looking to recruit someone to work with you in Malaysia, this is a great platform to reach out to this growing network of mobile researchers. Next slide, please. What you find there is also a partnering tool. I know this is a big challenge for a lot of researchers when they're starting their career. Oops, someone else is presenting now. Mustafa, could you have a look? Someone else is using the presentation screen.
Look, kemana? Please close.
So someone else is presenting.
Okay now?
Yes, we're back to the presentation. Sorry, there's a little bit of confusion there. So there's a partnering tool there. The people that are registering, the institutions that are registering on the EURAXESS portal have the opportunity to put out offers if they're looking to partner with someone. So you can use this. Yes, I can hear everything. I can see it's perfect. You can use this database to find research partners. You can either look for individuals. If, for example, you're looking for someone that you want to...
Ni tak slide. Respon sekejap dekat teks.
This is working well for me. You can also look for research organizations. And the EURAXESS network is also used by private research actors, for example, companies that are carrying out research. So it's a great opportunity for you to find research collaborators. Next slide, please. Mustafa, can we have the next slide, please? Mustafa, do you think we can have the next slide? No, Mustafa, can we have the next slide, please? Can you hear me? The next slide, please. And I think I can see it exactly what we can see on the next slide. Please, next slide. You can see it's also offering you a hosting database. Now, what is a hosting database? This will come in very handy. In a minute, I will be talking about one specific fellowship program that is currently open. And this fellowship program requires you to find a host in Europe, a supervisor, an institution that will give you a lab space. And here on this hosting database, you will find the listings of European institutions that are actively looking to recruit researchers from outside of Europe. So this is a very valuable tool, once again, for researchers that do not have a European network yet, but they're interested in carrying out research in Europe. Next slide, please, Mustafa. You also find a lot of information on that portal, information about what Europe is doing in terms of research, but also relevant information for you. For example, if you would like to do a sabbatical in Italy and you're not entirely sure about the immigration procedures or the insurance that you require, or where you could find housing if you are moving to Europe for a particular period in time. You find information there. And on the next slide, what we also have is personalized assistance. And I would like to emphasize this very strongly. EURAXESS is a network, it's a database that is updated on a daily basis with lots of information about opportunities, funding, jobs, networks. It is also a community of people that are waiting to assist researchers. So we have over 500 service centers across Europe. And these are the people that are waiting to assist you. If you, for example, say, I'd love to work with a specialist in my field because I'm looking to do a postdoc, but I'm not sure who that person would be. I'm not sure how I would approach them. I'm not sure what kind of funding is available. Then these people would be there to assist you. Now, on the next slide, please. I'm just telling you a little bit about who we are. EURAXESS ASEAN is based here in Southeast Asia. I am responsible for Singapore, Malaysia, and Indonesia. Normally, I would travel throughout these 3 countries and give presentations and assistance to you. Currently, that is not possible, but you can, of course, email me and you can ask your questions, and we can also arrange for a video conference if you'd like to have some personal consultation. My key advice is please do join our mailing list. And if you just send me an email to either of these addresses, I will put your name on our mailing list. And then if you see on the next slide, Mustafa, you can see, I think, a list of the events that we are organizing. We will start as soon as these restrictions are done. We will start again with our events. We do workshops, a lot of workshops on science communication, how to write a good proposal, how to network, not only within the academic community, also with industry partners. We have a lot of thematic roundtables. So it's really a very vibrant community that will help you in your career development. Next slide, please. So my key advice is for you to sign up to the network. So that is just the introduction to EURAXESS. But if we go on to the next slide, what I would like to talk to you in detail about today is a particular fellowship, which I think is fantastic. It's a great fellowship. It's the MSCA Individual Fellowship. You'll have to keep pressing the slides quite quickly here. So what is this all about? The MSCA Individual Fellowships. Next slide, please. MSCA stands for Marie Skłodowska-Curie Actions. And of course, it is named after the Polish-French scientist Marie Skłodowska-Curie, she who made great strides in discovering radioactivity. So this fellowship is named after her, and it is next, if you press again, this fellowship is part of the European Framework Program for Science, Research and Innovation called Horizon 2020. I'm sure you've come across it. It's worth 80 billion euros. It's in the final year now, but it will be continued by a new program which will be called Horizon Europe. What's important to remember is the MSCA, this is money earmarked for the career development of researchers. Next slide, please. So the most important thing is always to know what are the call dates. The call or the fellowship I'd like to introduce you to has just opened. It opened a couple of weeks ago and it closes on the 10th of September. So you have a good 4 months to apply for this. Next slide, please. These are personal fellowships. So they're not for your institution. They are not for a team of researchers. These would be for you as an individual researcher at postdoctoral level, and they're supporting a period of mobility. The funding is for between 1 and 2 years, so 12 months, 18 months, 24 months, and you can go either with a non-academic or an academic host, so a university, a research center, but also with a company, for example, if this company does research related to your work. It's a comprehensive career development tool. As I said, this is really meant to take you from where you currently are and elevate your career to the next level, to turn you into a solid PI. Next slide, please. Which topics are funded? And very short answer, all topics are funded. The key here to remember is there are no thematic calls. So the funder will not say, this year we're looking for these topics and these topics and these topics. It's entirely up to you to decide which topic you would like to research. It's the bottom-up principle. Next slide, please. Who can apply? And again, next slide, a very short answer. everyone can apply. So even if you're now in Malaysia, you're joining, but you're not Malaysian or not Indonesian, or you're from anywhere, you're from Syria or from Greece or from, I don't know, it's open to all nationalities. It is open to all academic disciplines. And let me stress this, there's also no age or experience limit. As long as you have a PhD, even if you already have 10 or 15 years under your belt, this is still a postdoc fellowship you can apply for, because, as I said earlier, this is meant as a career development fellowship. So let's say you're at a crossroads in your career and you think, I'd really like to explore this discipline. I'd like to change a little bit my scientific focus and make the transition to a different discipline. And this fellowship would help me achieve this. Then you would be a great candidate to apply for this. Next slide, please. What are the criteria? So of course, the first one is your qualifications. You would need to have either a PhD. If you press the button, Mustafa, it lights up PhD. Or if you press the button again, at least 4 years of research experience. And if you go to the next slide, because people always wonder what does that mean, because we might have people in the audience today that do not have a PhD. Research experience means you must have conducted full-time research after completing the academic degree that would have allowed you to read for a PhD. So think about this for a minute. I know this is a long sentence. Basically, if you have a university degree and you could have started a PhD, but you didn't, instead you went on to do research for 4 years in a full-time capacity, then you are also eligible to apply for this. Next slide, please. The second one is mobility. I said this at the beginning, this is a mobility grant. So the idea is for you to move. And because this is called a European fellowship, you have to move to Europe. The mobility rule applies. If you're on the next slide, just very briefly, if you want to go, oh, I haven't actually put that in, so just forget it. So basically the idea is you need to move to Europe. Next slide, please. Where in Europe can you go? And if we look at the next slide, you can pretty much go anywhere in Europe. So all the big players are there. On the left are the current members of the EU. On the right are those countries that are part of the European research area, including Turkey, for example, or Switzerland, which are also big players in science and innovation. And the next slide, because I know a lot of you will wonder, what about the UK? The UK is still eligible to host fellows under this call. So if you have close partners in the UK, you can also apply to go and work at a British university. Next slide, please. What is unique about this fellowship? Now, on the next slide, I'll explain what is unique about this. Unique is that you need to have a tandem relationship with your supervisor. So this is not a fellowship where you come up with an idea in your own office and then you present the final outcome to a host and you say, what do you think? Do you want to host me or not? The idea is really to find a host first, a supervisor, a partner somewhere in Europe, and develop a research proposal together. The funder wants to see that this relationship is a win-win relationship. So you as the researcher, you are benefiting from your European host. They have great institution, infrastructure, they have expertise in your knowledge. This is a person that can really take your career further, but you also need to bring something to the table. Maybe a potential collaboration between your current university here in Southeast Asia and the potential host in Europe. Next slide, please. What type of institution can you host and choose? And on the next slide, you can see, as I said before, you can choose a public or a private sector research actor. So you can do your research at a university, but you could also try to do your research with a company. And what is specifically exciting about this fellowship is the opportunity to build in a secondment. So you could say, I'm going to go with the University of Bradford in the UK, but I want to spend 3 months of my fellowship with Procter & Gamble in the UK. So this opportunity to do intersectoral mobility as well is what makes this an attractive fellowship. Next slide, please. How's this evaluated? Next slide, please. And you will see this is evaluated by excellence, impact, and implementation. You see on the right 10 pages. That means the actual proposal is only 10 pages long. And what the evaluator is looking for are these 3 criteria. And on the next slide, I've just developed this a bit further for you to see. Mustafa, next slide, please. And you will see what this means. Excellence, and this is the key question people are always concerned about. Ooh, excellence. Basically, you need to have an innovative idea. You don't need to, follow the invention of gravity. We're not talking about this, but it needs to be something that pushes your scientific discipline forward. And here you can also see, this is where the funder is looking for the quality of the host fellow relationship. They want to see that there's a good relationship, there is transfer of knowledge, there is a training opportunity. So you really need to, in your proposal, make it clear to the funder that this is a relationship between you and your supervisor that is of benefit to all. Impact in the middle refers to how good you are at communicating your research results. Keep in mind, the European Commission is one of the most vocal proponents of open science and open access. So the Commission believes very strongly if public money funds your research, the public also needs to have access to the results. So when you are writing about how you're disseminating your research results, don't just talk about, oh, I'm going to publish in this journal and that journal, but come up with a broader strategy. And finally, third, implementation. That, of course, is the funder wants to see this person has a good methodology. They know the workflow. They will be able to deliver this in time, and they will come up with excellent results. Next slide, please. What is funded? And on the next slide, you will just see some figures. And if you press again, Mustafa, there'll be some comments at the bottom. I just wanted to give you an idea that this is a really generous funding program. You have no teaching commitments whatsoever, so you can fully focus on your research. There's a family allowance as well, so if you have a spouse, if you have children, you will get money also to make sure that your family is taken care of if they come with you. Next slide, please. What is the timeline? This is interesting. And if you press on this next slide, you can see, so the call for proposals, it just opened. It closes on the 10th of September. And you would hear by February next year whether you've been successful or not. And then you could start in May 2021, but this is a flexible grant. You have up to 1 year to delay it. If you have to wrap up something, it takes you a while to just figure out your living arrangements, you can postpone this by up to 1 year. So very flexible conditions. Next slide, please. How do you get started? And the next slide, of course, how do you get started? First of all, you need to find the call for application. On the next slide, you can see where this can be found. I will share all these slides with you afterwards, so don't worry about taking down any details now. Next slide, I've also created, on the next slide, Mustafa, I've created a QR code as well, so you can scan that later. And if you click on the next slide, the reason why I'm mentioning this is very important. Just look on the right-hand side, the guide for applicants. So if you really are considering applying for this, the guide for applicants should be the document that you print out, you read from front to back, you stick it next to your screen, and you keep referring back to what does the funder want me to do for you to produce a good proposal. This should be your key document. It's also important to have a little bit of an idea what Europe is concerned with, what are the challenges that they've identified that they need to solve in the coming decades. So you can make reference to that in your proposal, how your research might be able to deliver some solutions. Next slide, please. Secondly, you need to have a research idea. And how do you do this? I think, yes, next slide, you talk to your peers. This is always the best idea. You bounce your ideas back with your supervisor, with your lab partners, with whoever is there in your field, and you develop a solid idea. Let me just tell you, don't get too hung up about the idea of excellence, because I know a lot of people see this and they think, oh, this is a barrier that I cannot cross, but you can. It's really just has to be something original, and you yourself will already know how good your idea is. And then thirdly, on the next slide, you need to find a host. This is key. As I said, this is a fellowship where you need to develop the proposal together with the European host. And on the next slide, I've given you some suggestions. Personal contacts, of course, are the best. Now, if you think back, you will already know people that might be potential hosts for you, either people that you keep citing in your own work, people you met at a conference, people that your research, you might have collaborators already. Maybe you go down to your international relations office at your own university and find out who your university is already working with. So there is already a network that you can tap into. But there are, and I mentioned this at the very beginning, 2 databases that I think would be of interest. If you click on the next slide, Mustafa, we have the EURAXESS portal. And the EURAXESS portal lists already hosting offers. So there are currently over 200 universities in Europe that are saying, we want to host a researcher for this fellowship. We want to work with this person and develop a proposal together. And what is interesting, a lot of them are offering very, very excellent support in developing this proposal together with you. So this is a fabulous opportunity to use the resources that are available. And on the next slide, we have also the so-called Debt for Mobility. Again, a Europe-wide network of institutions, and they also have put up expressions of interest, EOIs, where they are looking for researchers to apply jointly with them for this Marie Curie individual fellowship. Next slide. Now, wait. What makes this a very interesting fellowship is that it works in 2 ways. It promotes mobility not only from the world, for example, Malaysia to Europe, but also the other way around. If we look at the next slide, this individual fellowship has a second component, and I think this could be interesting for you as well. There's an opportunity for you to host a European fellow at your own institution. Oops. I've put here Malaysia, but if you're in Thailand, if you're in Indonesia, it doesn't matter. You can host a European fellow at your own institution. This person will come with this money that I mentioned a few slides earlier on. So you have no costs, but you have an excellent person to work with you for up to 2 years. So you see here in the next slide, this part of the fellowship can be up to 3 years long. The fellow can stay with you for up to 2 years, 1 or 2 years, depending on what they negotiate with you, but they have a mandatory return phase. So after they've done their research with you, they have to return to Europe for 1 year. Again, this is fully funded, and it's a fabulous opportunity to kind of cement the research ties that you have. So you might already work with research collaborators in Europe. So maybe, and on the next slide, I think I've made some suggestions what you should do to find a fellow. Next slide, please. Maybe you discuss this with your European partners and say, hey, how about you send one of your postdocs over to me for a couple of years? Reach out to your research network in Europe and see whether you can identify someone that you could host. And again, post your offer on the EURAXESS portal. Next slide, please. Where do you find more information? And on the next slide, I've listed a whole host of internet resources. So the MSCA website, there is the participant portal. We have, of course, our own EURAXESS ASEAN portal, and we have the EURAXESS Facebook page. I'd like to announce something. In July, we will have a webinar dedicated to those of you that are actually drafting a proposal. And in this webinar, we will have a couple of evaluators. And these evaluators will give very detailed feedback on the applications that you are drafting. So if this is something that you're considering, then please follow us on Facebook. I've put the QR code here, and join us again in July for you to maximize your chances at success. I think I have on the next slide also mentioning to you, there are other postdoc fellowship opportunities within the MSCA. If you remember, Marie Skłodowska Reaction is this big funding program, and the individual fellowships I mentioned to you just now, they're just one aspect. If we just summarize, for the individual fellowships, the onus, the responsibility is on the applicant. You need to find a host, you need to have an idea, you are the one that drafts the application. So it's a lot of legwork for you. We have other opportunities. If you go on the next slide, please, there are other programs within the MSCA where you can apply for a PhD or a postdoc position. And these are in so-called MSCA-funded research consortia. So these are groups of universities within Europe, and they are working to train the next generation of scientists that are working on a specific topic. And they offer PhD and postdoc opportunities. If you go on the next slide, and I've just put this here side by side for you to understand the difference. On the left is what we've just talked about. So we've talked about the individual fellowships. There's only one call per year. It's entirely up to you what you research. On the right-hand side, there's other opportunities, and these opportunities are opening up throughout the year. Every week we have new calls for application for PhD or postdocs that are funded by the MSCA, but these are more like job adverts. So this is where the funder is looking for a person with a specific CV, with a specific skill set. And all of these opportunities you can find on the EURAXESS portal that I introduced to you at the very beginning. Next slide, please. This is the final program that I think is interesting, and Professor Mustafa himself is part of a RISE program, so maybe he can also say a few things at the end. This is also funded by the MSCA, by the Marie Skłodowska Reactions, but if you go on the next slide, this is different. This is not about funding an individual. This is about creating networks that are promoting transfer of knowledge. So the idea is here is to connect researchers globally, small groups of researchers that are working on specific topics, to bring them together so that they can exchange expertise, best practice, and knowledge. Again, this is a bottom-up approach. There are no predefined scientific priorities. So this would be an opportunity if you already have European partners and you'd like to have a more institutionalized relationship with them and money that allows you to move people back and forth, then the RISE project would be a great funding opportunity. Next slide, please. This is a project, as I said, that builds on moving people around between different consortia partners. And the project's duration is usually 4 years, and you have 540 units of mobility. So the idea, if you just don't look at all the small print, the idea is if you have people in different projects, different countries that work together, that they can all visit each other once or twice to learn from each other. So this is a funding program that promotes mobility for the purpose of exchanging best practice and exchanging expertise and building international research ties. Next slide, please. interesting about this is that everybody can participate. So if you are yourself working as part of a research team, of course, there's not only PIs on the team, you will have maybe master students, you will have some PhD students, you will have a lab technician. Everybody on your research project can participate in the mobility. This is why this is a very attractive program. And the next slide, please. There's one call per year, and I mentioned this because of the COVID situation, the call has just been extended. So the call deadline is now the 12th of May, which means it would still be time for you to explore the opportunity to work with your European partners. Now, if this sounds daunting to you, let me just say one thing. The RISE project always has to be managed by a European institution. So there's the lead partner, and that has to be an institution in Europe. They are also the ones that have to draft the application and they have to submit the application. So for you as the international partner, the workload is actually reasonably small. So if you already have a network of European partners, there's still enough time to encourage them to put in a RISE application and to suggest for you to be the international collaborator. Next slide, please. I think this is the end of my presentation, what I have today. I've listed here again the resources that are available for you to find out more about these schemes. But let me maybe just conclude like this. There is lots of funding available in Europe, not only in the form of the Horizon 2020, the joint European funding program that all the European partners are contributing to. And I've just introduced you to two of these programs today, which is the Marie Curie Individual Fellowships and the Marie Curie RISE program. There are literally hundreds of other European funding programs available. In addition, on the EURAXESS portal, you will find all the national funding programs. So Germany will have funding, Belgium, Switzerland, Italy, all of them also have their own funding programs. And this is what makes the EURAXESS portal such a useful tool for researchers, because you have all this information in one place. If at some point you are stuck and you need further information, this is where you have EURAXESS ASEAN, which is me. You can contact me and I will assist you either by giving you the information myself or by connecting you to someone in our huge network that we have that can assist you further. I would just like to say we have a growing network of Marie Curie Fellows in Southeast Asia. Just to give you some numbers, each call of the individual fellowships are awarded to about 1,400 fellows. So it's a growing community. Globally, there's 140,000 researchers so far that have benefited from the MSCA individual fellowships. And I would love to see more researchers from Southeast Asia that are joining this group of really talented mobile researchers, because I know there's great research talent out here, and I'd love for more of you to be able to make use of this opportunity. Mustafa, thank you very much. I'm available now for questions if there are any.
Thank you, Dr. Susanne, for a very informative and interesting session. I personally think it is very beneficial. Before we start with Q&A session, if Prof. Mustafa would like to add anything on the MSCA RISE program?
Okay, a little bit. I think Haida also, we have also our clip from UTM, Dr.
Yes.
Haida. So, Dr. Haida, you want to say something? So, under MSCA, I think it's a quite interesting program by EU. It's a lot of opportunity. You can expand your networking. It's not only within one country. You can expand more than one country. So, especially for my experience, I didn't know the counterpart from UK request to me to be a partnership. So when we joined the program, so we can expand another activities with another partners from Greece, from Thailand, from China, and so on, so on. I think it's quite good and interesting. It's not much KPI you need to achieve from this type of research funding. So I think it's quite interesting. All right, Dr. Shu.
Anything Dr. Aida from UTM want to add? If no, then we'll proceed to Q&A session. Before we start the Q&A session, please state your name and your institution or affiliation before you proceed with the question. So you can on the mic, or Dr. Susan may also can see the chat on your right side. If the mic is not working, they can ask the question in the chat room. Can we have a question?
I've seen a question asking whether we can share the slides, and yes, of course, I will share the slides. I will. All the slides are hyperlinked. There's QR codes in there, so you can look at all the information at your leisure. In the slides, of course, you will find my contact details. So please do not hesitate to contact me if you need further assistance. And also, once again, I really want to encourage you to use this individual fellowship. If you yourself are not in a position to apply yourself to go, please do consider this as an opportunity to host someone. We have, unfortunately, very few European researchers that are being hosted anywhere in Southeast Asia. Even in Singapore, we've only had 2 in the past 5 years. And I think this is a great shame, because there's fabulous research that can be done here. And I think the key reason is that researchers in Europe, they just don't know about the opportunities on offer. So I would just encourage you also, if this is something that you are particularly interested in right now, please send me an email after today's presentation, and I can discuss with you how we can maybe make these opportunities more visible.
Hello.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, my name is Muslim Diakola Kamu. I'm from University of Malaysia. From the slide, I could read that one of the requirements is that you must have PhD. And sorry, can you hear me now?
Yes, better.
Okay, like you must have PhD and 4-year experience in research. Currently, I'm graduate research assistant, and I'm still doing my PhD. So, but when I got admission to do my master, it was master by research. So, and through my 3 years of study, it was I was doing research assistant. So that was like for 2 years, and I started in the GRE work. That was in middle of last year. So everything is going to 4 years. So I want to ask if I could consider that as 4 years experience. You understand? Because I'm here to, maybe next year or probably this year, I'm going to finish my PhD. So I want to consider my experience through my master by research and this PhD. Can I consider those experience as 4 years experience? So that's my question.
Yeah, thank you for the question. So the funder is really trying to make you eligible, but you will have to document those 4 years of full-time research experience, and you can do so either by providing a research, a contract that you've had, stating the position that you've held. You could maybe provide also research output that you have produced during those 4 years, or any other research publications that you may have produced. They are strict though. They need to see that this has been 4 years of full-time research employment. So if you've worked most of your time, I don't know, in a library and you just did research on the side, that this will not count. I also have to tell you that the majority of successful applicants do hold a PhD. There is no rush. If you think you will have your PhD next year, then my advice would be to just start preparing your application now and apply for the call next year. This is an annual call. The call deadline next year will be exactly the same. So you just give yourself a little bit of time. Unless, of course, you say, no, I can document this. I have the employment contract. I have the necessary paperwork that will show that I had 4 years of full-time research experience that is equivalent to the PhD.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Can we have more questions? Dr. Susanne, we have one question in the chat room. The question is, what is the percentage of successful rate for MSCA fellowship?
The success rate is not very high. It's about 16%, 1/6. So that is low. But, and I know what you're thinking, and I always like to say, don't see it as a deterrent, see it as an encouragement. These are very prestigious fellowships. There are lots of people applying for it. And not everybody who applies for it is excellent. And this is also, I guess, which explains why it's only 16%. But you should see it as a challenge, because you really want to be one of these 16% that gets this fellowship, because it is not only, as I said, a very comprehensive career development tool, it does open doors for you for your next career. A lot of the Marie Curie Fellows go on to secure funding from other very prestigious sources. A lot of them go on to win the European Research Council grants later on in their career progression. So yes, it's not a very high percentage, but please do see it as an opportunity.
Hi, Dr. Susanne. Thank you very much for your very insightful presentation. My name is Susanna. Still, we have more or less similar name. Okay, I'm from University Malaysia, Kelantan. I would like to ask perhaps one question. From my experience last time when we dealt with Apex research proposal and also the Erasmus Plus, there appear to be numbers of successful projects that have been, awarded, and the final report of the what you call outputs have been posted on the website. For example, in Erasmus Plus. So, do EURAXESS, for example, like Horizon 2020 and RISE, have the similar mechanism so that we could have a reference and guide, you know?
Absolutely, yes. There's lots of information. I will put in the presentations, I will add a few slides with links to successful applications. There's actually an organization that took the time to look at all the successful and the unsuccessful applications in 1 year, and they produced a handbook. And this is a fabulous resource for you to really see what works, what doesn't work, what is the evaluator looking for. So I will, by all means, yes, I will add this information to the presentation. I'll add it to the slides and I will share it with you later today.
Great, that would be very, very much helpful. And in the meantime, I missed your first part of the presentation, and it would be helpful if you could share. I think the rest of other audience would also like to have the full slide of your,
Of course, yes,
yeah.
of course. I will share all of this.
Then.
No, you're welcome.
One question from the text. Can you see it, Susanne? From Muhammad Al-Fatih.
Yes, I mean the question is about rice. Can there be multiple groups within one Malaysian institution? And there's a formula that applies. The formula is 2 + 1 + X. So basically, a rice consortium needs to have at least 3 members, and this have to be 2 European Union member states, so maybe Germany and France, plus 1 country that is an associated country, that could be Switzerland. And then they can add as many international partners as they want. They can add Malaysia, Indonesia, Thailand. They can add 2 institutions in Malaysia, or 3 institutions, or 4, as long as it makes sense. Yeah, so it has to be, of course, a proposal that explains why these partners are valuable to the project, why they need to be involved in this RISE consortium. So my key advice would be if you have strong collaborators in Europe, my key advice would be just contact them today, tomorrow, the day after, and say, hey, the RISE is still open. They will know what this is all about. This is a very well-known program in Europe. And ask them whether they are ready, maybe working on a proposal, because a lot of them will do so, and ask if there's an opportunity to add you as an international collaborator. The RISE, by the way, has a much higher success rate. The success rate is about 20 to 25%. So that, again, also makes it very attractive.
Can we have more questions?
Well, if there are no more questions now, maybe take your time to think about it and just email me later on. Again, I will put some frequently asked questions in the slides. So something that you might not think of now, or maybe something you don't want to ask right now. I have about 6-7 slides of frequently asked questions at the end. And otherwise, just send me an email. My details are in the presentation as well, and just ask your questions then, and I will do my best to help you.
Thank you, Dr. Susan. The slide, I think, will be emailed. The link will be emailed to you. If you already signed attendance, we have the email list, or you can also email Dr. Susan, as she mentioned earlier on. So yeah, this is just an announcement. We do have another UniMAP sharing session, just to promote a little bit, Dr. Susan. UniMAP sharing session next time with Associate Professor Dr. Muhammad Arif Anwar Muhammad Saleh about winning scientific paper, writing scientific paper, winning editor heart. So yes, with that, I would like to hand over the session to Prof. Mustafa to conclude the session.
Right. All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Shohada. Thank you so much, Dr. Susanne. I hope we can meet you face to face. So for all participants, please make sure you will fill the attendance forms, and we will email you the e-certificate soon. And also we email you the slide together with the recording videos. On behalf of RMC UniMAP, I want to thank to all the partners, especially from our colleagues from UITM, UPSI, UPM, UTM, UTHM, UUM, UMK, USM, UKM, UMP, UIA, UMT, MMU, and from Indonesia and Thailand. I think we have almost representative from Malaysian university here. So once again, thank you so much, Dr. Susanne, and meet you again. Thank you.
Bye.
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 See you soon.
See you soon. Bye. Thank you, Haida.